spirit guides we often hear a lot of. Maybe what is the Holy Spirit? You know, A Course in Miracles, if we really understand the spiritual metaphysical principles, can help us to learn how to get unstuck by listening to the inner voice that's within us. And I will call that gifts of the Holy Spirit. But what is the Holy Spirit? You know, we hear a lot of talk about spirit guides, and it's a popular term these days for, people feel that their spirit guide may help them overcome the feeling of being trapped in life. Hey everyone, this is James Nussbaumer, and thanks for joining me in another episode of For a Better Life podcast. And I want to say, first of all, that I appreciate every one of you listening to me, because these podcasts really excite me. But let's talk more today about what really is the Holy Spirit, and the very best action for understanding the Holy Spirit in you, which I'm going to suggest today, He is you. Now, you can call the Holy Spirit her. Remember, in eternity, our divine self, there are no masculine or female overtones. There's no such thing in eternity. The Holy Spirit is our link to eternity. So please bear with me. And by the way, this question came up from Lori Ann in Ladson, South Carolina. And she had messaged me, quite detailed messaged me saying she's trying to get the Course in Miracles. She feels it hitting home with her, but she has a problem understanding what is the Holy Spirit. And Lori, that's ironic that you live in Ladson, South Carolina. In my many years ago, in my younger days, I spent 4 years living in Charleston, South Carolina. And I know the Isle of Palms, and that was my favorite beach out that way. And I was stationed in the United States Air Force Base at Charleston Air Force Base at the time. In fact, my first daughter was born there in Charleston. Now she's approaching 40 years old and is a school teacher and doing well. In fact, I'm mentioning her in this article anyways, but I love South Carolina. But so, Lori, I'm going to get to the bottom of, try to help you. I can't really give you a concrete answer, because concrete is of the ego mind. And you're going to have to tap into your abstractness. And abstract just means kind of let things flow over your mind. Kind of like when you're looking at an abstract painting in an art gallery. You don't really try to dissect it. You just kind of let the feeling of what you see flow over your mind. So that's what I'm asking you to do. But I'm going to do my best here and show some examples of how you can understand the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Please, if you're at YouTube listening to me, everyone, keep in mind that in the description area down below is a link to a blog article that I'd written, very detailed, over a year ago. And I've embedded this podcast into that article that I'm doing today, which today is July 13th, 2018. And the article that I had written was about a year ago, in 2017. But so I'm forming this podcast, this For a Better Life podcast, from that article from a year ago in 2017, which was also from my first book, The Master of Everything, A Story of Mankind in the World of Illusion We Call Life, and published by Ozark Mountain Publishing Company. I got to get that out of the way. And then there's book 2, the sequel, called Mastering Your Own Spiritual Freedom, Lessons of A Course in Miracles. And then book 3, I'm just so thrilled with, called And Then I Knew My Abundance, was just released a few months ago. And all 3 of these were written from prison by hand. For those of you that don't know me, and for those of you that do know me, probably getting tired of me mentioning that. But I only mention it for those that don't really know me and think they like my message and are trying to get to know me. So let's move on here. And let me say that, being in a rut or feeling, trapped in life and needing to climb out of adversity or climb over adversity, rise above it, that often can be from a thought system that teaches us that our body should be regarded as our temple. How often have we heard that? Has that been taught to us? Your body is your temple. Okay, well, this is true in a certain sense. However, it really means only to the surface of who we are, and who we reflect ourselves to be in this world, where we feel as though to win, we need to win to gain, and winning and gaining seems to be so important, where if we have, for us to gain, someone else must lose, and that kind of a thought pattern is of the body, of the ego-based mind. But there's something deeper within us. But for the most part, honoring the body is only a minor step in answering that one question that much of the world struggles with when they're feeling like they need to climb above adversity. And that question is, who really am I? What am I? You ever have those kind of thoughts? Well, A Course in Miracles has a profound statement in the beginning of the text. It's one of the foundation principles in the text of A Course in Miracles that states our temple is not a structure at all, such as a building or a body. Every temple has its altar where holiness abides. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a temple. Now, as you're listening to me, Lori Ann, and everyone else listening, keep in mind that key word. It's every temple has its altar. Altar, A-L-T-A-R. It's altar. And that's where holiness abides. In other words, holiness, your divinity. So keep in mind that key word that the Course in Miracles is giving us. Every temple, that key phrase, every temple has its altar where holiness abides. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a temple. So, but rather than viewing our body as the temple, let's go a little bit deeper here if we can, and consider the actual foundation of our temple as being our true essence, or we can say our being. Excuse me, I had to sip on a cup of morning coffee. And our true essence, we can say, in a sense, is the Holy Spirit. So bear with me. And, as you move on in this article too, please keep in mind that that's why I urge you to learn how to do mindfulness meditation. And it's because that really is the habits of all the successful people that have ever walked this earth. And, believe it or not, that's what Jesus was doing, is meditating a lot. And a lot of people, have a conflict with that thought. But no, because we're afraid of the word, for the most part, from the West, the word meditation. And I don't want to dwell on this, and that's in another podcast, but prayer is for the asking, and meditation is for the listening, for the answer. So, but let's get back to that foundation. Underneath that, underneath that foundation of life is where our altar sits. And it is at this altar where we see our purpose in life. This is what, makes the light within us shed forth. I felt Lori Ann's light shining through to me when she was asking me so truly if I could explain more about what is the Holy Spirit. So that was a light that I picked up on, because it's the same light that she was shining to me. We are that light, and that light that we share in any feelings we have about the world, each other, that's the Holy Spirit linking us together. All right, it goes deeper than that, but the Holy Spirit, we can say, is our being, if you will. And I discuss more on that in a related article too, that I've also written about, a wonderful ebook, Get Out of the Rut free ebook that is available online, and I hope that you'll get that. And if you're at YouTube listening to this podcast, in the description area down below is a link to take you to the free ebook of a man's wonderful story on how he changed his life because of learning how to tap into his inner divine self and reflect his inner awesomeness to the material world. And if you're at my blog listening to this in a blog article, you'll note a picture, a photo, an image of a man. That's me sitting in a prison cell, supposed to be me, and writing. because I put that there because it kind of is really kind of what I looked like while I was in prison writing the first book. So let's move on and say that, anyways, I hope that you'll access that free ebook and download it right into your inbox. So what is a spirit guide? Well, we can say the same thing. What is the Holy Spirit? You know, spirit guide is just a name, letters in the alphabet, the same as the Holy Spirit. It's the meaning behind the word we're after here today. So if someone told me, which they do a lot, and I agree, that they liken this inner essence of themselves as being the Holy Spirit, or if you're not comfortable with that, you can say a spirit guide, if you will, but not in a woo, ghostly manner, okay? Nothing woo about it. So, and I'm going to expand on that here too, but more so I see that when you meet your spirit guide, we can say, which is really when you meet the Holy Spirit for the purposes of this podcast, it's like what the Course in Miracles states as the Holy, this is another principle in the text of the Holy Spirit. A Course in Miracles states the Holy Spirit is invisible, but you can see the results of his presence, and through them you will learn that he is there. Now, that principle is going to ring through to you as I move on. I'd written my first 3 books, like I said, of an ever-developing series, and there's more on the way, but I'd written the first 3 books entirely in longhand from behind bars while being in a rut. Believe me, it was an overcrowded, overbearing, obnoxiously overloud prison environment. Violent as hell, I can say. It's a hell on earth where inmates are feeling trapped in life and just living in one another's faces all day long because you're packed in and living literally on top of each other. The atmosphere was terribly violent and volatile, as I'd written in my blog article that the link below, if you're at YouTube, takes you to. And if you're already at my website listening to this, then you'll be able to read on and kind of help follow me. You'll be able to follow me here. But often I believe this is what, also I believe this terrible and volatile, this volatile and violent din of the cell block often I believe is what brought these words for my books, from my mind through the pen and onto paper. And there was no computer in prison, so I had to do everything by hand. I'd begun to undo, and A Course in Miracles may call it atone, which you could say atone at one, but I don't want to get too complicated on that. If you hear a siren in the background this early morning, don't worry, they're not coming to get me. It's just going by this early morning. It looks like an EMS vehicle. But I began to undo that feeling of being in a rut. And, so when we meet the Holy Spirit, or we may say, for you people that prefer, when we meet our spirit guide, let's talk about that. I would sit there in prison and learn how to get unstuck and wait to be released by a judge who said that he used me as an example. The waiting was extremely difficult, but I knew it was temporary as I was handed out a 10-year prison term. Well, I'd served 8 years of the 10 years, and a higher court came in to release me and really saw that I should have never went to prison in the first place. And the higher court had seen that the books that I was writing, and I had a mainstream publisher, Ozark Mountain Publishing Company, and the higher court stepped in and said, look, we got to get this guy out of prison. He doesn't belong there for all this securities violation mishap that went on. I was a financial advisor for 25 years, but I remember while writing the first book, The Master of Everything, the first book of the series, I never knew it was going to go to a series. I always just thought, I can just get this one book going. Well, and I would be saying to myself how this project had saved me in more ways than one while I was in there, and I grew so much as my book would grow. And it was for me, how to end, trying to climb over adversity, that feeling of being stuck and how to get unstuck. I'd write solely by myself, but I'd have helpful suggestions from a oneness inside of me. I felt it as a oneness of which we all are a part of. And in my writing, I call it the oneness of God. I would feel this oneness. I would feel these, one of my favorite writers of all time and spiritual leaders, Wayne W. Dyer, the late Wayne Dyer. I know probably every word he's ever written. And Wayne Dyer often said, why do we discount these urgings that we get inside? Why do we discount these intuitions, these hunches? So often we as humans, we want to discount these as just, or if something good happens, we want to throw it off as a lucky guess or just a fortunate thing that came our way. But why do we do that? It's the oneness I call God, which I'm saying. So bear with me on that, Lori Ann, for trying to understand what is the Holy Spirit. So while writing this book, it had kept me so busy each day while I was in that volatile, and I say volatile, often violent din of the cell block. I would lose sleep at night, anxiously, waiting to pick up where I left off the day before. It had consumed me so much that time was just flying by. Course in Miracles also teaches us that the Holy Spirit uses time for your benefit. Think about that. Each day I would receive as a gift of the Holy Spirit, which I call it. Each day I would receive gifts of the Holy Spirit, which would be in the form of words that I could not seem to find the previous day. On those days, while being in a rut and lost for words, I'd often wake up in the middle of the night and I'd think, that's it. It's like the light bulb went on. A sentence that was needed to complete a paragraph or a metaphor I needed to help explain an idea. It would come to me in the middle of the night. Something to assist in an area I seemed to be adverse over or being in a rut over would appear in my mind. Was it the Holy Spirit giving me signs or spiritually minded steps he was helping me with, kind of like holding my hand and leading me step by step, keeping me calm and alert? Excuse me as I clear my throat and take another sip of my Maxwell House morning coffee. Well, anyways, I do, however, discuss in a related article at my blog on controlling fear and anxiety this way by understanding the Holy Spirit in you. Anyways, that's not what this is about, but you can find that at my blog at jamesnussbaumer.com. Just go to my blog and look up maybe anxiety or fear and you'll find that. Excuse me again, I'm sorry. But let's talk about how to get unstuck by understanding the Holy Spirit. When the final chapter was nearing the completion of this first book, a blissful feeling continued to flow through me. In prison, I get this bliss coming through me. I was just like chills. I knew I was going to miss this project. I was nearing the completion, and I wrote the book over and over and over by hand. And I finally come to I'm like, I can't rewrite this any more than I've already written it by hand. A friend of mine would send me pens, boxes of pens in from the outside that I had to get approved through the warden because you ordinarily, they don't allow that, but they made an exception for me. But I was sad. I wanted to go back and start over again and rewrite, but I finally came to a point in my mind where something within me said, you've written enough. Now it's time to end this book and go on to book 2. Oh my gosh, I was just chilled. I was like nervous about this, but excited. I was sad, but I was sad because I could not get it to the book to mature beyond the handwritten stage. I didn't have a computer in prison, and it was really a backwoods prison system. The thought alone would send me back into being in a rut. I had not had Ozark Mountain Publishing Company yet. They still didn't know about me. So I just had to learn to trust the inner voice. The inner voice kept saying to me that, just keep doing what you're hearing, what you're feeling. So my only other resource was not a resource at all, but was available if I wished to use the prison typewriter. And that's why I wrote by hand, but you'd have to stand in line, and it was available, and it was just so crowded in there. Everybody was trying to use the typewriter for whatever reason. And I couldn't do that. I needed to be writing all the time. So need I say, even if I was able to use that prison typewriter, it wouldn't be up to, with missing keys, and there hardly was any carbon through the ribbon, and it would have looked a mess going to a publisher. So I hand wrote, letters to publishers, and I had enough rejection letters to wallpaper the entire inside of the prison. So anyways, the growing pains of that, still didn't have a publisher yet, but regardless, being in a rut for me ended, and my words did mature into a book. It was like 6 months before it was released. It was in 2015, which was years later, after I had already written the first book, that Ozark Mountain had answered one of my letters and said, we want to get involved. And they offered me a contract. But at the time, first of all, let me state another principle in the Course of Miracles. It states, what the Holy Spirit enables you to do is clearly not of this world. For miracles violate every law of reality as the world judges it. So as the journals that I would write into sat in the bottom of my footlocker, the inner voice of my spirit, the Holy Spirit, encouraged me to keep writing. And I remember thinking how these books surely are children to me. And that's my cell phone going off in the background. So please just disregard that noise if you hear it. A little bit of a music thing. That's my ringer. But so I remember thinking how these books were surely like a child to me. And in many respects, it's been like the experience of watching my daughters grow to adulthood. And I see that first book kind of like my firstborn child. I remember asking my little girls when they were growing up, in cute little girls. I remember asking them in a joking and affectionate manner on their birthdays when they were little to promise me not to grow any older. I would say, I like you just the way you are. You're so beautiful. Don't grow any older. And they would say, oh, Dad, we have to grow up. We want to grow up. I want to grow up. My oldest daughter, Erin, would say, but they knew I was kidding. And, and it was just a giggly kind of thing. And I would chuckle and they would giggle. And so I would say that I wish that they could remain little girls forever, but inevitably they did grow up, and they are now doing wonders in the world. My oldest daughter's a school teacher. The other one has a business going, and their accomplishments are just wonderful, and they've got kids, and they're doing great, and they both have got wonderful husbands. So I say that because my books now have matured, and they're now in the hands, the first 3 books, at Ozark Mountain Publishing Company. How did they get there? So I'll answer your question again, Lori Ann, as I get ready to close. What is the Holy Spirit? If it wasn't for that inner voice, if it wasn't for me trusting the Holy Spirit, that inner voice that was within me to keep on writing, to not worry, keep sending letters to the publisher, just keep doing it. Each rejection letter, I would get tons of mail all the time back from publishers, all of them rejection letters. No, no, no. But every time I got a no, a voice went off inside me. It made me smile. That's okay. I'm closer to getting someone. At least they're reading my proposal, and at least they're getting back to me and saying, sorry, but most of the time, the publishers that rejected me would give me some helpful hints of what to put in another letter to another publisher. And I kept following their hints. And eventually, now here I am with Ozark Mountain Publishing Company. So does that help answer your question in an abstract way when you let it flow across your mind? What is the Holy Spirit? I hope it does. I hope it answers your question, because it's very powerful to me. And if you read my first book, especially, which gets you set up for book 2, there's so many miraculous events that happened to me while I was away. Even how I found A Course in Miracles was just unbelievable, but I won't tell that story today because that's not what this is about. But that's all about what book 1 is about. And then book 2 takes you on deeper into mastering your own spiritual freedom. And then book 3 is just another tremendous batch of miracles that happened while I was away. And I think book 3 is my killer book. the way, it's like my third child that's really going to save the world, but I think all three of and I got future writings yet too that are really, getting ready to go. Book 4, we're doing some slow editing on that right now, and I expect it to be released in 2019. So with all that said, please support my work, everyone. And you'll notice at my blog article, I promote other people's products, other authors' products. Sometimes, often I do, because they promote my books, and so we help each other. And the only reason I have those, like at my blog, you'll see in the sidebar, and then through the article I have links, because there may be something that might help you, but maybe not, but other people, because we're all different. We all have different needs and wants and help that we need. So I promote other people's products, books, videos, and they promote my book. That's how the universe works. The universe never ends. That's the Holy Spirit in us. We can say, you ever lately been hearing things about the law of attraction, the law of manifestation? That is the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is our link to God as one. If you're linked to something, you are at one with it. But the ego-based mind, which is not real, it's the human body that will one day perish. The ego-based mind does not really understand and is kind of doubtful and fearful to grab onto the notion of the Holy Spirit being our connection with God. And if we're connected with God, that must mean we are at one with God, and we are. That's what the Course in Miracles teaches us, and that's why the Course in Miracles is based on forgiveness, the real meaning of forgiveness, which means to overlook your errors, to overlook everyone else's mistakes and errors, and go beyond that to the real light that they are. Go beyond the cloud cover of the body that's trying to block. And in my first book, I call pulling up the window shade. We seem to have a window shade in our mind that's pulled down, not letting the light in. The light is really who we are. The light is the link to our source, which is God. That light is the Holy Spirit. So when we can pull the window shade up, we let the light in. The window shade is letting the light in, letting the cloud cover of the ego-based mind to fade away. So I hope this makes sense. And if it doesn't, for anyone listening, please message me. And I invite anyone to send me messages either through my website or at YouTube, and just mention, hey, James, can you talk about this at your next week's podcast? So with all that being said, it's time for me to get moving along here, because I went a little bit overboard, and like I seem to always do. So I hope you'll subscribe to my newsletter. I've got a couple different newsletters going on. One is a subscription only newsletter. It's a mastermind group, closely knit of people, and it's subscription only, but you might not be ready for that, and that's okay. And that's why I have a couple free versions of the newsletter. And you're welcome to join any one of them that you would like. Well, I hope you're thinking a lot about your own life and all the natural and inner beauty that is within you, the light that is within you. I hope you are sensing that, the true essence of who you are. I hope you are just don't think about it, don't dissect it, just reflect it to your material world. And that will make your life situation just a perfect replica of a grandeur rather than the grandiosity of the body. Of course, we want our body to look great, but that's why reflecting the light of who you are makes your body filled with that grandeur rather than the grandiosity. I hope that makes sense, and I wish the best for you in life and love and all the success the world has to offer. I've got to run now. James Nussbaumer signing off, and God bless.